If you want to know how to make hologram bony dudes in Blender in the most convoluted way possible, here you go. If you're pushed for time, here's the 10-second version. Okay, now for the rest of you, put your feet up, grab your favorite blender, make some freshly squeezed time, and let's go! Splat attack! Now we need to turn those models into Gaussian Splats, 3D GS scans, scans. The preferred nomenclature is all over the place. Usually when I want to turn a real-life object into a 3D GS scan, I use KIRI Engine, the mobile app. Why? Because it's awesome and super easy to use and gives amazing results. And two, I work for them, so of course I'm a total shellstar. But you should try it out for yourself and see how good it is. But this is kind of a special case. We're not scanning the real world or even a solid object. I want to turn a Blender object with a volume shader into a 3D GS scan. Kinda tricky. So I trained the model locally on my own computer. And that is its own long and precarious road of tutorials to travel. So I've shared the models on a link in the description. By the end of the training, I have two .ply files, one for the skin and veins and one for the skeleton. And to bring them into Blender, we need an add-on. It's free. Shameless add-on plug, but it's free, so shame begun. The add-on is the 3D GS Render by KIRI Engine add-on, and I made this add-on with a bunch of the dudes at KIRI, so of course I want you to check it out. It's totally free, so go enjoy. The links are in the description. And a word of warning, the first time you use the add-on, you might want to say, "Woohoo! Woohoo! Because it will seem pretty damn slow and totally different to working with Blender meshes, like regular meshes. So the name of the game is optimization, namely, remove as many faces as possible, apply as many modifiers as possible, and only enable updates or HQ mode when you want to render or preview things. Splat Attack 2, the importing. Okay, I already have the add-on installed. If you want full instructions for the add-on, go check out the docs. I'll be zipping through it. Import both objects. Enable point cloud preview to lighten the load and while you move things around and set up your camera. Once everything's in place, enable updates and update to view. Now, altogether, our models are made up of almost 5 million faces. Ugh. So let's bring that down as much as we can. From the Modify Edit menu, I'm checking how much I can decimate without ruining the total look. Then applying the modifier. If I don't need a modifier, I'll just remove it. And I do the same for both objects. Okay, now we have less than 2 million faces, which is much better. Not super duper, but much better. If your camera's doing some like funky Scorsese one shot through the back of the restaurant and into the club movements and twirls and whatever, you should definitely keep your object faces updated with the add-on. Updated to face the camera, aka don't apply the 3D GS render modifier. But my camera is doing a pretty linear move on its own z-axis, and I really want to improve performance, so I'm going to apply the modifier. The dark and the light. Now fill the world with never-ending darkness. If I add some lights inside the models, they glow. This would usually be considered bad, but for holograms, it's great. I want to see a little bit of something at all times, so I'm going to add some lights just for base visibility. Then add an area light inside, and I'm going to animate it from bottom to top, start to finish. material holograms in a material world. Both our objects share the same shader. But to sell the idea of like holographic shells, we need to separate the skeleton a little bit. So I'm going to give the skeleton object a new attribute called skeleton. In edit mode, I'm going to select all the faces. I'm going to hit F3 and search for set attribute and set the skeleton attribute to 1. Now we can use an attribute node in the shader using the skeleton attribute to access only the bones. I'm using this attribute to mix between the normal color and inverted color, and I can keyframe it so he goes from a regular bony dude to a freaky negative looking guy at the end. And the material already has a little group thingy for messing with alphas, and add and subtract are the same thing, but you know. Anyway, this is a good way of making the model look thick or very thin. And we can keyframe this too. You could use a wireframe node and keyframe it to highlight certain areas. It has some very interesting effects with these 3D GS objects. And there's no right value, just play with it. I barely know what I'm doing myself. HQ bones, high quality bones, not headquarters. So the add-on and EV materials in general let you flip between LQ and HQ or blended and dithered alpha modes. If you want a fuzzy kind of painterly look, which I really like too, stick to LQ. But if you want it smooth, enable HQ, but it will render much slower. Either way, you should use LQ while you're working, because HQ slows things down a lot. Render it and add some atmospheric industrial nonsense noises and some compositing. Done.